Hello, hello, and welcome back to Thought Couture. And Happy New Year as well. I hope 2026 has treated you kindly thus far. It could have been a little bit kinder to me, and that's why this video is coming out later than I wanted it to, but we carry on. Today, we're celebrating Thought Couture reaching 75,000 subscribers, which is so far beyond any hopes or expectations I had when I started posting a little over 2 years ago, and words cannot express the gratitude I have for your presence and support. Pretty much every YouTuber I follow has done a milestone celebrating Q&A video at some point, but I have not yet, so I asked you to ask me anything. And you asked some very interesting and discussion-provoking questions, most of which could be videos in and of themselves. So let's start with a simple one. How's it going? Still trucking along? The horrors persist, but unfortunately for the horrors, so do I. And speaking of horrors, do you feel optimistic about the future of literacy in American education? Diving right into some hard-hitting stuff. Ooh. Well, I'm optimistic by nature because I have to be, and I think negativity too easily leads to despair and inactivity. In fact, I think optimism is a requirement for a change because you have to believe that something better is possible, even and especially when it's an uphill battle. Regarding literacy, the one thing I know for sure is that we have to go back to the phonics model of literacy education, sounding out a word, and throw the whole language model, which is glorified guessing, out the window. It's gotta start there. So imagine being like 6 or 7 and staring at a brand new word, and your teacher tells you, just look at it and hope its meaning kind of manifests magically in your mind. That's essentially the whole language model. Not allowed to sound it out, you guess. And I don't know how anyone could possibly learn how to read by guessing. To my knowledge, schools are going back to phonics because of the disastrous outcome of the whole language model, but I don't have like statistics on that right now. But this question got me thinking of the American education system as a whole, which we can't really divorce from literacy education in specific. And where do we even begin? The sad reality at the moment is the Department of Education pumps more money into schools every single year, but the student outcomes are not improving. And I think it's going to take radical change to see improvements, but I'm not well versed enough in educational policy to know what those changes would be. I'm open to hearing arguments in favor of restructuring the Department of Education, but I, I don't trust anyone, period, in politics right now to actually do that in a non-destructive way. Well, one pretty radical change that I am aware of are the states who are instituting cell phone bans during the day, because to some extent the poor outcomes are absolutely because of the damn phones. Here in New York, this is the first academic year banning cell phones from bell to bell, and I'm eagerly awaiting any end of year report on how this went. And my final thought on this, just kind of zooming out, is that there's a difference between education and schooling. Education and learning can happen anywhere to anyone, and given that both the American public schools and higher education are in a period of pretty extreme instability, I think more of that education is going to happen outside of them. One really fabulous example of this that I discovered recently, I think is so cool, is a group called Lectures on Tap, and they host lectures given by professors in bars across the country to anyone who wants to come. That is cool as hell, and it's actually not dissimilar to the 19th century Lyceum movement, which was a lecture series that traveled around the US, was open to the public, and it was integral to the American adult education at that time. I suspect we're going to start seeing more things like that. Pathways to taking your education, your learning into your own hands. As for my own education, where did you get your degrees and what are they in? So I got my bachelor's from a small liberal arts school in upstate New York, Skidmore College, and then my master's from one of the SUNY schools. So in undergrad, I was a double major in English and music, and in the English department, I was on the creative nonfiction writing track, which kind of blended writing workshops with the traditional literary theory and history classes. And then in the music department, I focused on piano performance as well as the standard music theory and history. Master's was in English, and I concentrated on Anglo-American modernism. But my final thesis was more of a creative project that blended analysis of modernist poetry with personal essay. And that was very fun and cool, and I'm very grateful that they offered a creative option. I would love to talk about music more on this channel, and I hope to in the future. So that brings me to my next question. What are your favorite artists, albums, and songs? So I am a huge fan of Stevie Nicks and Fleetwood Mac. Rhiannon is my absolute favorite song of all time. Very fortunate to have had the opportunity to see them perform live 3 times. Stevie solo twice and Fleetwood Mac as a group once before Christine McVie passed, and I treasure those experiences. Otherwise, huge fan of Tori Amos, Florence and the Machine, Joni Mitchell, Joan Baez, Brandi Carlile, Kate Bush, pretty much any witchy and or folksy woman in essence. Also Hosier, who is basically an honorary witchy woman. And I also listen to a lot of classical music, given that's what I play and I love it dearly. I'm partial to the romantic and modern eras of classical music, your Brahms, Chopin, Rachmaninoff, Debussy. So I've been playing a lot of Bach lately, which is surprising to me. When I was still like taking lessons, I was just not a Bach person, but in my old age, I guess I get it now. I get it now. I also thoroughly enjoy choral music and opera. Back in college, I sang in the school's chorus, alto section, and I had so much fun. It's just such a wonderful experience to sing communally, and I hope to do that again at some point in the future. What are your recommendations for someone who wants to have a more regimented schedule? That's a great question, and if you find the answer, please let me know. I think I mentioned this in a previous video, but I'm forgetting which one right now. But I'm not really the kind of person who can set my own schedule and then stick to it. Techniques like time blocking or the Pomodoro method just never really worked for me. And that's why part of my vision for this channel is to approach productivity, personal growth, learning, etc in a softer, gentler way that works with our more natural rhythms and inclinations. To lift some of the pressure to be regimented in the first place and to work with our nature, not against it. That said, I do have a few tips that I use just about every day that do help me. First, I use an old school pen and paper to-do list. Not sure how much of this you can see, but I just jot down what I need to get done every day, and I have a little like, graphic system. The triangles are the things that are most important, and the boxes are things that would be nice to finish, but not the end of the world if they don't get done that day. And when I finish the thing, I either fill in the triangle or check off the box, if I remember, because sometimes I forget. It's about as clear and simple as could be, but that's the point. I really like having something where I can just quick glance at everything that has been done, everything that needs to be done, all in one place. And second, I try my best to adhere to what I call the rule of one, meaning I must finish one thing, at least one thing, every day that either advances one of my creative projects or offers some sort of intellectual stimulation. And I'm talking super small, literally one thing. Read one page of a book, write one sentence, knit one row. I'll almost certainly end up doing more than that one thing, but even if I can't or don't want to for whatever reason, small progress is still progress. All in all, I think being regimented is more about the intent, deciding to take that first step to be productive rather than how much you actually produce. It feels like more people than ever are reading, but critical thinking is at a low point. It sure is, isn't it? Unfortunately, reading and critical thinking don't necessarily always go together, and in fact, I would say those are two totally separate skills. Although I'm not totally convinced that people are reading more than ever, we're definitely seeing people read more than ever, thanks to the rise of book talk and social media algorithms in general. If you like book content, you'll be shown more book content, so it kind of creates that illusion that everyone is reading but you're only seeing the people who are reading. So to some extent, I think this seeming imbalance is due in part to a lot of the reading that we're seeing is escapist reading, reading for entertainment, which doesn't typically require deeper thought or criticism. But the fact that we might be seeing someone read, say, classic lit or more challenging literary fiction or nonfiction is not necessarily evidence that they are engaging in critical thinking. As evidenced by every Goodreads review, that's like, this character had a bad thought. That means the author is also having those bad thoughts. Like, no, no, that's not how that works. And I think this issue harkens back to the education question, and specifically the fact that students are increasingly being taught how to pass tests instead of how to think and learn. And that's how you end up with college students who aren't used to reading whole novels and who are relying on ChatGPT to write their essays, and professors who have no idea what to do with them. I suppose all of that is to say, most people can understand the words on a page and enjoy a story, but often it does end there. Books are the perfect place to practice critical thinking, but they can't themselves teach it. Sure would be nice if they could, though. How much information do you expect to retain from casually reading nonfiction books? 30%. Is that generous? I'm not sure where it's a little too casual that I'm not retaining enough to make it worthwhile. This is an interesting one because it's something I hadn't thought about in such like quantifiable terms. So during a brief Google search, I came across the common idea that we only retain about 10% of everything we read. But I also found that there's pretty much no empirical evidence to suggest that this is actually true, and that neuroscientists are still trying to figure out cognition and learning. So, with that in mind, and based on pure speculation on my part, no, I don't think 30% sounds generous or unrealistic. But I do suspect that how much info you retain is highly dependent on a bunch of different factors. Things like, are you reading a physical book or an audiobook? How challenging is the book? What is this writer's writing style? Gosh, even like, what is your energy level that day? Are you getting enough sleep? And by casually reading, I assume you mean you're not taking notes or annotating. And if you wanted to boost your retention, that would be my top tip. So I don't know if we're even able to estimate how much information from a book we could retain. It's probably going to depend on the day and on the book. But common sense tells me we should probably not aim for 100%. That sounds unrealistic. As for how to know if you're retaining enough to make reading worthwhile, in my experience, like, you're gonna know when you don't know what the fuck you just read. Case in point, last year I read SPQR by Mary Beard, and I started out reading the audiobook, or listening to the audiobook. And about 40-ish percent of the way through, I realized that I did not remember a damn thing. I could not tell you what I heard. And that's when I knew that plugging along on the audio was absolutely not worth my time. And that's specifically because I know that I don't retain information through listening as well as I do by reading. So then I switched to the physical book, and it was a totally different experience, so much better. Hello. So while editing and gathering my screenshots, I realized I missed a question, and it kind of relates to the previous, so I'm gonna slide it in right here. And I'm glad I caught this because I think it's an important one. Do you have advice on how to catch up on education when you have barely any knowledge about anything while having a hard time dealing with overcomplicated resources? Socrates famously said that a wise man knows that he knows nothing. So, congratulations, you are a wise individual because you know that you have hardly any knowledge about anything. And I sincerely believe that society would be a significantly kinder and wiser place if more people acknowledged how little they actually know. It sounds like you think your lack of knowledge is a barrier to education, when in reality, it's the opposite. This means you can only learn more. And yes, being a beginner can feel overwhelming and uncomfortable for a while at first, but what's way more uncomfortable is never even trying and then later wishing you had. As for how to actually catch up, First, it sounds like you don't even know where to begin. But because, to use your words, you have no knowledge of anything, you're kind of free to start anywhere. Any topic that's grabbing your interest right now, maybe a skill you've always wanted to possess. Maybe there's something you loved years ago, but that you gave up on. Yeah, I don't quite know what you mean by overcomplicated resources. And because I don't know what topic specifically you might be interested in, I can't really give like concrete suggestions as to like places to go and look for them. But if you're watching and want to clarify in the comments, feel free. But in general, I would say step one is pick something. Whatever it is that is most exciting you right now, start there. A quick Google of beginner books for insert topic here will usually give you a pretty good list of places to start. Also, consider consulting your local librarians. They'll absolutely be thrilled to help you and will probably be better able to guide you to resources suitable for your specific needs and desires, and are probably also aware of any educational, learning opportunities that are available in your area and in the library itself. And when we're learning something new, anything at all, absolutely anything, we're going to be challenged and we're going to face topics and concepts that are difficult and that we don't understand. And I think we can either choose to be intimidated by this or get curious about it. I urge you to be curious. Assuming you want to catch up on education for personal enrichment, you can go as slow as you need. You can take it one concept at a time, break them all down into their smallest pieces. You can follow your questions and your curiosities wherever they happen to lead you. If one resource isn't working for you, drop it and find another one. Again, even in the moments when it feels awkward and confusing and like you're just totally in over your head, you have no idea what you're doing, there is no downside to trying to learn more. There is no worst case scenario in this situation. So down in the description, I'm going to put a link to one of my relatively recent Substack posts, which is just a long list of free classes, both on YouTube and other places on the web, that are mostly humanities courses. I'm not sure if that's exactly what you're looking for, but hopefully something in there could just be like a starting place, jumping off point. I hope this answer was at least a tiny bit helpful. If nothing else, just know that I and everyone else who's either watching this video or subscribed to this channel absolutely 100% believes in your skills and abilities. You can do this. Here's another interesting one. Do you think romantasy is actually a problem, or are people just being Puritan about women and female sexuality? So admittedly, I'm not really up on the romantasy discourse at the moment, and I've never actually read it, so take this with a grain of salt. But regarding the Puritanism, yes, whenever there's any sort of cultural phenomenon that caters to women's desires and fantasies, and in which women are publicly enjoying the erotic, there's going to be backlash. And for sure, I think a lot of distaste for the genre is just thinly disguised pearl clutching. It's a tale as old as time, unfortunately. As for whether romantasy is a problem, I'm not positive exactly what you mean by problem. And in general, I would say that I don't really consider any one genre or publishing trend inherently problematic. I will take someone reading anything over reading nothing any day of the week. And although it feels like romantasy is just dominating the publishing industry right now, and that every book is titled a blank of blank and blank, it is a trend, it is a publishing trend that's going to eventually hit its peak and then die off and be replaced with something else. My only problem with it, I guess, is just that it is the kind of literature that I mentioned earlier that doesn't demand much from its readers. And to be abundantly clear, I am not against reading for fun and entertainment, but I wish we could figure out how to encourage romantasy fans to try something just a little bit more challenging, just a little bit further outside of your comfort zone. Because if you like romantasy, you very well may enjoy the magical realism of Gabriel Garcia Marquez, or the class and gender dynamics of Jane Austen. But you won't know if you like those books until you try them. That said, I kindly request that the next big major viral publishing trend be stream of consciousness literary fiction and genre bending memoir. No reason. It's not like that's what I write or anything. I don't even know why you would suggest that. On that note, what are your top 5 genres? Either favorite or most often read, or what you write in, or both. So, classic lit, of course, is number one. Even if it's not technically a genre, it is its own category, so I'm including it. And then literary fiction, especially anything that's very character or voice driven or highly stylized and experimental. Creative nonfiction, as mentioned earlier, is what I personally write mostly, although more recently I've become open to trying my hand at fiction. And specifically, I do personal essays, memoir, and cultural criticism, all of which I love reading as much as I do writing. And then there's poetry. I cannot write poetry to save my life. The poetic muse just flew past me. I don't know why, but the experience of reading it is unlike any other. I actually have not read as much poetry as I would like to in recent years, but as mentioned, I am a huge fan of the modernists. T.S. Eliot, Ezra Pound, Hilda Doolittle, Mina Loy, Marianne Moore, Gertrude Stein, at ilk. And my last pick would be horror, like genre fiction horror, which is usually my go-to choice when I just want to read for fun and entertainment. Sometimes all I want is just a weird, spooky, atmospheric vibe. Have you heard of the anti-brain rot reading challenge? At least in my algorithm, you and This Story Ain't Over are similar in spirit, and I think I was recommended yours via hers. I heard mention of the anti-brain rot challenge a couple of times, I think primarily on Instagram and then maybe once or twice on Substack, but I didn't actually know where it came from or who created it. And it does seem like the creator you mentioned, This Story Ain't Over, did. And I had not heard of her, so thank you for sharing and the recommendation. I'm overjoyed to see that an anti-brain rot challenge A exists and B seems to be making the rounds and getting people interested. I'll link the challenge video down below. It seems very well thought out, and I like that it seems easily customizable to your individual needs, but still designed to push you a little bit more than you're used to and expand your reading horizons. Personally, I will probably not be joining in only because my main goal for this year, my reading goal, is to read the Bible for the first time. And like, if that is the only thing I do this year, then I will be happy because my God, it's a lot. But so then everything else I'm reading is sort of revolving around that and is subject to my whims and moods. But as I was watching the challenge video, I was thinking about how my approach is usually more like, how can we make anti-brain rot a lifestyle instead of a like temporary project? But it struck me that this sort of challenge could be a fantastic entry point into this lifestyle. Challenging yourself to read for 45 minutes a day and take notes on it, read in different formats and from different writers, that could be someone's first spark, like their first encounter with just how much better their brain feels. And that is so exciting. So I wish everyone who might be embarking on this challenge the very best of luck and success. And the last question, that is most certainly not the least question, I'm going to read the whole thing just for a context for my answer. I dropped my studies when I was a sophomore. I'm working here and there to earn money to bring food to the table, but a conventional lifestyle doesn't attract me. Most of the time, I'm pretending with people. I only live my fullest when I'm alone. Reading, learning new things, contemplating art, and one-on-one conversations, these things make me feel alive. But I'm stuck. What should I do to live a life where I can uninterruptedly read, learn, and think? Want to live to know more, not to earn building materials. Do you have any thoughts on this? If there's one question that I so wish I had a 100% foolproof, concrete answer for, it's this one. Let me start by saying that although the thoughtful and creative path can be a lonely one, you're not alone in wanting it. I very much relate to how you're feeling, and I'm willing to bet plenty of people who subscribe to this channel do as well. And in fact, I think part of the project of this channel and my Substack newsletter, particularly given some of the things I plan on writing and sharing about this year, is to document an attempt to build this kind of lifestyle, despite the sad fact that in this day and age, it is kind of a fantasy. Specifically, it's the uninterrupted reading and learning that is the fantasy when we need to put food on the table, even though that's what we all long for. It would be way too easy for me to say, oh, why don't you go back to school? Why don't you try this kind of job? Why don't you do this sort of thing? But I don't know your situation. And having been the recipient of why don't you just do XYZ sort of advice from people who aren't living my life, I know that it can be wildly unhelpful and even kind of infuriating. And truthfully, I can't think of a single viable career path today that could satisfy what you're looking for, short of somehow scoring a Renaissance style multi-millionaire patron, and I'm pretty sure those don't exist anymore. Our millionaires are weird and boring. Just the other day, actually, I think it was on Substack Notes. Not 100% sure. If I can find it, I will put it somewhere, but I came across a post that was encouraging creatives to start viewing their day jobs not as barriers to their creative lives, but as the modern equivalent of the patron. And I think that would be the most actionable and practical advice that I could possibly offer. Do what you need to do to house and feed yourself. Do not romanticize the idea of the starving artist. If you can find work that is reading, learning, thinking, art adjacent that you like well enough, like it's fine, cling to it. And then throw yourself into what you truly love every other hour of the day. One final thought that just came to mind is I would take some time to research the careers and the day jobs of your favorite writers, artists, creatives, the great thinkers. Because I think we often have this idea that living a life fully and only dedicated to the arts and to thought and reading was easier to achieve in the past somehow, when really this has never been true. It's been incredibly, incredibly rare to achieve that sort of life for everyone. T.S. Eliot was a banker. William Carlos Williams was a physician. Octavia Butler had all sorts of odds and ends jobs, including, I think, telemarketing and dishwashing. Henry David Thoreau worked at a pencil factory. I always find that one particularly delightful. People who could only write or create for a living almost always had some sort of help, usually in the form of their wives or generational wealth, or struck it big in their careers. These are the sort of facts we don't always hear about, but we should, because the idea of the full-time writer, creative, scholar has almost always been a myth. And you start to feel like you're in good company when you realize that all of the people that we look up to now were in the same boat at some point. I so hope that is at least a tiny bit reassuring. So I had one final thought, but I think this is the best one. Whatever it is that you have to do to survive, can you look at it as an artist and as a thinker? Do you interact with people who would make interesting characters? Have you had any sort of experiences that you could turn into a short story? Does whatever you do during the day bring up some sort of question that you want to explore? I'm very serious when I say that I think one of the things that literature and the arts, but especially literature writing, needs most right now are people who have experiences doing things other than write. I think we've reached our maximum quota on literary fiction novels about millennial writers living in Brooklyn who are written by millennial writers living in Brooklyn, you know? And of course, it's easier said than done. But looking at, the conventional parts of life that are less than ideal, not so much as like this is taking me away from art and creativity, but instead as this could fuel my art and creativity in ways that maybe aren't immediately obvious. It's a way of making that part of your life more bearable, but ultimately your art more interesting. Well, that was fun. Much to consider and ruminate on in the coming days. Thank you again so much for such meaty questions. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. And thank you all again from the very bottom of my heart for simply being here. I'm working out my plans and schedules for the coming months, and I'm very much looking forward to continuing down the path that Thought Couture has been on, but also incorporating some more creative writing content, as well as a newer kind of video essay. New to me, more like storytelling instead of commentary. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you so much again for spending your time with me. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.